And this is the old Boise County Courthouse. Built in the 1870s, it was one of the first institutions of government in the new Idaho Territory, because before that it used to be Washington Territory. And you can really see how the discovery of gold in the Boise Basin brought the makings of government and the early territorial status that would lead Idaho to statehood. And naturally, most of the politicians involved in this area were also gold miners and cattle barons and different magnates brought from the early California gold rush. J. Marion Moore was a powerhouse of early pioneer politics in the Pacific Northwest. And if you think that was a mouthful, wait until you hear his story, because it involves an entire war waged 300 feet underground between pioneer miners in rival companies. So his story begins in Tennessee. He was born there in the 1830s, and he migrated out west for the California gold rush. But by the 1860s, the Indians were telling him, you've got gold on the Oregon Trail that you passed over to get here. Because they were so focused on California, they never even bothered panning the rivers just a little bit north of the Snake River that they took to get over to California. So in 1862, J. Marion Moore changes his name to J. Marion Moore. Before that, it was Jonathan Neptune Marion Moore. He changes his name because it's very likely he killed a man out in California. And he's the second party to actually reach the Boise Basin. Well, he, being one of the first men here, is by that virtue granted political power. And he starts championing the cause of Idaho Territory. At the time, he wanted to draw the borders for this territory at the Cascade Mountains, because the territorial governor was basically granted authority over the gold mines in whatever territory he controlled. And Moore believed that controlling all of Idaho would give them a lot more. He was a territorial grabber. They never really granted him this authority, but they did grant him Idaho Territory. And Idaho Territory was created a year after he got here in 1863. Well, because he was such a powerful man, he was involved in zoning and basically determining the territory of mines. It began as the Boise County Courthouse, but over the years it became a hotel and a restaurant. But you can see they were preparing for the worst. This is made of thick steel and brick, so they would have been preparing for a sort of holing up, possibly in one of the range wars or mine conflicts that frequently raged up in the territory. And some of the buildings on the main street of Idaho City are pretty old. This one is, well, it dates back to the time of gold mining in the basin here, back to 1865, the old Mercantile Company. And I'm actually standing on the porch of the headquarters of the oldest newspaper in Idaho now. This is Boise County, but he also had a lot of holdings down in Owyhee County. And a rival mine down in Owyhee was the Golden Chariot. And the Golden Chariot and Moore's mine, they both agreed, because their territory had been divvied up crossing each other. They said, well, we can agree to have a neutral zone, like a neutral strip right between the two mines. So we'll meet in this neutral strip to discuss if anything goes wrong. Well, in 1868, a few years after his holdings up in Boise County went bankrupt, the wall dividing the two, 300 feet underground, was broken through. And immediately all-out warfare broke loose 300 feet below the bedrock. And this they dimmed their headlamps, and if they saw a headlamp in the dark, they would immediately light up whoever it was. Rifles, pistols, and half the miners were in charge of just fighting, not even mining. And it got even worse because every day that they couldn't ship their ore out, that was about $1,000 lost for the mine. And by the time they wanted to make up for it, they were considering just killing everybody in the rival mine and taking it over. Well, pretty much immediately in 1868, in March, they killed the first settler of Seattle. He was a mountain man. He came down here to make a little bit of a fortune in his later years. In the Pioneer Cemetery here, you have at least 2 graves, marked ones, of victims of the Owyhee County War. Cornelius Dixon was a driver coming up the valley, and they kind of ambushed him and shot him, presumably to take whatever payroll he was bringing to the mines. And John Cornelius Holgate is kind of the man who blew the lid off it and drew the ire of the governor of the territory. Cornelius Holgate was an early settler of Seattle. He was very famous, and he came down here in 1862 for geological work to the Boise Basin area before coming probably because of the mine owned by Marion Moore, because he had a lot of holdings up in Owyhee County. He came down here and was shot in the head. And initial reports said, oh, he entered through the barrier in the mine to the opposing mine and was killed because he was going in there trying to cause a ruckus. But in reality, he probably just crossed over because it looked like a tunnel. At that point, people were coming back and forth with rifles all day.
And this attracted the attention of the governor, who immediately decided to send it took 6 days to send 150 troops down from Fort Boise to Owyhee. And by the time they arrived, they found that the crew of the Golden Chariot mine had been driven to the surface by Moore's men. Well, they got there and they said, no more. You've killed enough. Quite a few people have died. And the territorial administrator meets with the owners of the mine at the old Silver City Hotel in, it's called the Idaho Hotel. It's famously a haunted hotel.
Mining community, and overlooking the town is picturesque St. Joseph's Catholic Church, the oldest church for whites in the state. A smorgasbord of eateries and saloons still serve the needs of residents and visitors to this basin.
On April 1st, 1868, the Owyhee County mine war came to a truce, and officials from the territorial government brought 150 soldiers down from Fort Boise and enacted this truce. And on the top floor, the territorial assayer, along with a couple other people, they were signing the documents when J. Marion Moore, he didn't feel too good about the whole truce because his men had taken over the Golden Chariot mine. And he lost about half of his mine's holdings because they had taken it over until the troops from Fort Boise came down and told him to go on and get. And he got drunk in the bottom floor of this hotel, came out and saw 3 men from the rival mine and went to go raise his cane when one of them shot him in the chest. He died 3 hours later on April 1st, 1868. And following this, the man who shot him, he was shot in the arm, had to get that amputated, and later on he would die as well from gangrene. And it was a tragic end to the Owyhee County mine war of 1868.